always look for an opportunity to create social impact no matter where you work. You don't really need a purpose-driven agency to do purpose-driven work.
Yeah.
You just need a purpose-driven brief.
Right.
And that could happen in any agency, in any design firm.
In today's world, how does a brand break through the noise and become iconic? Join me, Jason Harris, as I speak with the world's leading marketing experts about how they use soul and science to build an iconic brand. Think of it as EQ meeting IQ. So let's lock in and together fast forward our marketing minds on the Soul and Science podcast. Welcome to the Soul and Science podcast. Today's episode is all about conscious creativity and how marketers can apply that philosophy to their work and the world. I'm joined by Bill Oberlander, who started the agency Oberland, which just won AdAge's A-list purpose-driven agency, which is a very coveted and hard thing to win. So we're going to talk a lot about Bill's career and about his agency, and we'll see where the conversation goes. Welcome to the podcast, Bill.
Thank you, Jason. I am a little blur in the eyes because we over-celebrated and over-served after that AdAge event. So I'm still limping a bit.
How late were you out?
I think I was out to like 1:32, but I'm getting up there in my senior year, so I have to
Yeah, that's a good run.
Yeah, it was fun.
So, Bill, tell me, how did you get into marketing? Did you just fall into it, or did you always know you were going to go into marketing advertising?
I don't think anybody knows. Well, I think that's the exception, not the rule of people knowing what they're doing. But when I was a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s, the television was the centerpiece of the family dynamic. So I was always watching television after school, after dinner, and of course, served up at all the programs was all the commercials, all the jingles, all the celebrities, and it was just magical to have Ed Sullivan and the Mod Squad and the Gong Show, all that in your living room, and I found it to be captivating, and it kind of set the course for my career because I felt like I wanted to be in business, but in some kind of show business, some kind of creative expression. So, but what happened was my father was a German descent, so I had three sisters, and he put a big priority on the boy in the family, and I was the only son. So he picked me out of public school and put me to private school, an all Catholic boy private school, and it was very career driven. The academics, science, math, all that crazy stuff. And I had one art course for over 4 years.
No way.
But I just had this, I was always writing scripts and listening to music and doodling. And so when it came time to go to school, my father wanted me to follow the steps of my cousin Robert, who went to Notre Dame and he's a business major. And there were two things gnawing at me. One was I always wanted to be in some kind of creative field, just gnawing at the back of my head. And Notre Dame was not the place to do that. And secondly, I just finished 4 years of no girls in my social circle. And Notre Dame, I think the ratio men to women was 5-1. So I was really campaigning against that. So I figured out a compromise, which was I found a school, University of Delaware, where I could be a art major and a business minor.
You could get the major you wanted there.
I started as an art major, fine arts major, and then I started to get disillusioned about how fine an artist I could be. So I gravitated towards design. And then when I was finishing up my sophomore year, I visited a friend's father who worked at BBDO.
Oh, cool.
And I was walking the hallway saying, what is this Shangri-La? These people are just walking around in cut-off jeans and listening to music and smoking cigarettes in their offices. And I said, we got to figure out how to get here. So I actually went to my professor at the University of Delaware and brought back the one show, the Art Directors Club, AIGA, all the award annuals. And I said, I would love for these books to be my study guides. And this would be the curriculum for the next 2 years. So I kind of invented the advertising program at University of Delaware.
Oh, wow.
I just kind of, and it's amazing that he agreed and let me just roll through that. So it seemed like I knew what I was doing because I had the creative thing and I had the business acumen from business administration, a minor. And, I just graduated and came straight to New York and started pounding the pavement with the yellow pages and a rotary phone.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Where did you get your first job?
Well, before, I think I actually remember the Red Book. Remember this thing called the Red Book?
No.
It was the encyclopedia of all the ad agencies.
Okay.
So I had that on my left, the yellow pages on the right. And you would basically just call the receptionist, and you would say, "Is Robert Berger the art director on American Airlines? Can you connect me to his office?" And then Robert would pick up, or not, and then you would just try to get an interview. So I did that 66 times before I finally got a job.
How many interviews did you get?
I had 66 interviews.
You had 66 interviews?
Yeah.
So you must have tried to call 300 people or 400 people.
I was just going up and down Madison Avenue.
You had 66 interviews. That's amazing.
But I landed a job at McCaffrey McCall. I don't know if you remember that agency.
No.
How old are you?
I'm not young, but I don't remember that agency.
Yeah, it was the first agency to be bought up by a holding company, Saatchi and Saatchi.
Okay.
It was the first time any kind of holding like entity was being crafted. But I worked on ABC News, Air Canada, Mercedes-Benz. It was like pretty right up the middle, right out of the gate. I was very lucky, and I just hustled.
Did you bounce around New York agencies after that?
I've always been in New York since 1981. So yeah, I was there. I was at McCaffrey McCall for 4 years, and I got a call from McCann Erickson. So I switched to McCann Erickson to work on Coca-Cola and American Express. And that was the first time I was really in kind of an international landscape. And so I was there for 4 years. And then I got a call from Richard Kirschbaum. And he saw an ad that I had done for a product called Waterman Pens.
Yeah. Fountain
pens. And he tore it out of a magazine, gave it to Laurie Greenberg and said, "Find this guy. Who's the art director?" And so Laurie tracked me down, and Richard hired me. He basically gave me the keys to the car. He said, "Run the creative department."
Wow.
And I was so not prepared. I had no idea what to do, what I was supposed to do. So
Kirschenbaum was like very, very revered, very hot agency.
I was there. I started when I was 29. I left when I was 41. So I was there for 12 years. Yeah, I was there for 12 whole years. And
yeah,
when I started, there was only 7 of us. And when I left, there was close to 400.
Amazing.
So there was a lot of explosive growth. And I got to give Richard and John, they were really very innovative and risk-taking and, really just being very different than the rest of the industry.
And when did you start your own agency?
10.5 years ago.
What prompted you to start Oberland?
So I was at JWT working on Microsoft and Nestle and Bloomberg, and I just turned 50, and I was just going into one of those midlife awakening moments where everything felt a little less meaningful.
Yeah.
And I was actually on the Ad Council Creative Review Committee, and I would sit in those meetings and get really excited about social issues, whether it was secondhand smoke or seatbelts or forest fires or teenage pregnancy, whatever. And then I go back to my office and work on Nestle lasagna. And I was just I was excited when we were doing these social impact issues. And then, the bread and butter stuff was just losing its energy in my system. And I was actually living in the suburbs, and my marriage was sunsetting. So those 3 things were all just coming to a head. And I got a call from Susan Kirschbaum. And she said, "How would you like to get off the agency treadmill?" So I took a job as CMO at the Robin Hood Foundation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that is a hedge fund philanthropic endeavor. And they wanted me to help recruit more millionaires because they kind of had the market looked out for when it came to billionaires. So and I love New York. I'm a big New Yorker. And it was basically raising money to help out people in disfranchised communities in the 5 boroughs.
And how long did you do that job?
That was 2 years. So in the back of my head, I was trying to take the creativity and start to, interface it with consciousness. And that was what Robinhood was supposed to be. But Robinhood became more of like the same routine, more fundraising, more cocktail parties for billionaires. And it's a really good organization, but I kind of got restless. So I asked them if I could become a contractor, not an employee.
Yeah.
and they became my first clients.
That switch is how you started.
Correct.
And when you started it, did you say this is a purpose-driven agency, or did that come later?
The agency has been purpose-driven from minute one. It's in the DNA. The tagline was creating brands with higher purpose. That was the angle from the beginning.
Now it's make good money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an evolution of that too, because it was creating brands with higher purpose. Some people kept on saying, "I can't believe you actually can pay. You could hit payroll, and you're working on all these not-for-profit brands." And I didn't want to exclusively be working on not-for-profits because there's no real scale there. There's no real sustainability there. So I changed it to profit with purpose. So it was all about making money. And the line "make good money" came from a pitch. We pitched Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
And they had a $600 million sustainability fund. And that was the line, "make good money." And they laughed us out of the room. And I was so put off by it. I said, you know what? That's a better line for Oberland. So
I think it's a great line.
yeah, it's good.
The agency is what, 10 years old? Yeah, you just celebrated 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And so, were you 5 people for a while, then 10 people? How did the growth happen?
The growth is happening now.
Okay.
Because of our relationship with ELF and the So Many Dicks campaign, because that is something that's getting a lot of attention. And with that comes inbound inquiries, winning pitches without even a pitch, just a phone call and a handshake. So
amazing.
That is really coming. It's getting a lot more momentum now. But I would say, we were 5 people. I remember our first office was on 24th Street, and we were subleasing a couple desks from a Russian digital design shop. I mean, it was scrappy, I worked at the Soho House for a long time. I would just go there in the morning and grab a table and work till 6 o'clock at night until the coffee switched to vodka tonics, and then the DJ would start up,
Was there a point in time through that 10-year history where you almost went out of business?
I remember a
that
time.
happened to us 4 or 5 times.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of founders can share the same woe over a lot of drinks. It's really scary. And now you're an investor, so it's a different kind of dynamic. But
oh yeah,
I remember on my bike at 5 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of July, I was so afraid of running out of money and missing payroll. I mean, that to me, it was like pitching and payroll. It was a constant dynamic back and forth. And I couldn't sleep at night, so I just rode my bike up 6th Avenue to the office. And I was just wondering, what am I going to do if this doesn't work out? What am I going to do? Now I'm 56. A white guy in the advertising agency at the age of 56 can't get arrested. There's no there.
Right.
So I was trying to figure out, what do I move to Mexico? How am I going to figure out how to put my 2 kids through college and pay alimony and pay child support and pay rent, all those kinds of things. So, I mean, how did you get out of it? How did you get out of that tailspin?
The only way to get out of it is to win. You have to win your way out of it.
Right, but how do you have the hope? How do you have the inner fortitude?
You just fucking do it. You just keep going. What do you think what is Bill Oberlander particularly good at?
I think I am unrelenting. I try to figure out the difference between unrelenting and relentless. Relentless is a slightly less benevolent, so I'm going to go for the unrelenting. But Lisa Topol said, "Here's your tagline: an equal opportunity prick." And I've been called worse. I think I'm really good to cutting to the bottom line. I'm in my 60s now, so I have the wisdom and the business acumen and the client radar to know what's going to work. So I'm kind of like bottom line Bill. I just cut away all the nonsense, clear the noise, and find out where is true north in a nanosecond. And some people get rubbed the wrong way because they find it to be sharp elbows and abrupt. But I'm chair now at the agency, so I have less day to day. So I just kind of see a bigger picture down the road stuff. But
tell me about the ELF campaign, So Many Dicks, which obviously I loved. It's such a bold idea. How did you sell that in? Was that hard? Did you have to be unrelenting there, or was that just like ELF takes big swings and they loved it immediately?
It was both. Both. I mean, let me back it up. So about 4 years ago, We were probably like 35 people. We were on the 5th floor of 254 Canal Street, 24 windows wrapping around. I mean, I art directed, designed it down to the last, push pin. And there were 2 people in our new business department, and they were just sitting at their desk staring at the phone. And I kept saying, this is not how it's supposed to work. Like, the best new business department is just better creative.
Yeah.
Just a better product that gets the attention to potential new business leads. So those people segued elsewhere, and I took their salaries and I moved it to Lisa Topol. So I've been trying to hire Lisa Topol for years.
Yeah.
She was one of my writers at Ogilvy, and she's just a real creative powerhouse, but has a really big heart, and she cares a lot about social issues. I tried to hire her once and I couldn't afford her, so she went to DDB for a couple of years. And I saw like 18 months, 2 years later on LinkedIn that she was leaving DDB, and we were pitching Thinks.
Okay.
The period underwear. And I don't think I have the chops to talk about menstruation and period underwear. And so I hired Lisa immediately. I said, listen, this is a great client. The clients are from BBDO. They speak our language. Make a play that really speaks to young women about their periods and period underwear. And so I put Lisa right up in front. And we were basically dating to get married. And I never touched the product. She was writing the script. She's the one who wrote the script about the older woman who said, you could put a man on the moon, but for 30 years I had to find a string sticking out my butt crack. I mean, I can't write that.
Right.
So when the campaign was almost ready for presentation, Lisa had a line that was the pitch line that was think outside the box. And I was like, love the campaign. I think the line isn't big enough to hold all the social impact stuff we want to do with them. But I also didn't want to get in Lisa's face. So I just wrote on a Post-it note, a little tagline, and I pushed it across. And it was how the new generation thinks, THINX. And Lisa scribbled out the word "the" and put "up," and that's the winning pitch line.
Amazing.
And they bought it right away, and we went to LA and we shot it. So that was kind of the bar that was set with Lisa. Just go for it. Use your life experience, but also understand what makes these brands tick. And with Lisa, you get creative prowess, but you also get a Rolodex. So she was the one who, after a year's time when her non-compete expired, she was the one who we could actually get those relationships she had when she was at DDB. So one of her clients went from Kroger to Michael's. And our Michael's client is wonderful. And that is because of Lisa's relationship with her.
Amazing.
And then Elf was a relationship with our head of strategy, Kate Charles, who knew some folks over at Elf. So we got an assignment to do a motion graphics video about how they have more women on their corporate executive board than any other, Wall Street corporate board. And after looking at it, it was Kate and Lisa who said, wait, maybe there's more to this. So they started looking at why is there so few people of color and women on corporate American boards? So they found out, that there was more guys named Richard, Rick, or Rich, or Dick than any other kind of person on corporate American boards. And that was that was how they cracked the code on that thing. And to be honest, my business partner, Drew, who's the CEO of the company, was hesitant to present it because, you're talking about genitalia and it's a dick joke and everything else. And he actually said, maybe it's pornographic. I said, have you met Corey, the client? I mean, the CMO of Elf is such a powerhouse, and she just wants to take risks. And she really wants to really empower women to take these senior positions. So the platform is called Change the Board Game, but the campaign is So Many Dicks campaign.
Yeah, it's so good.
But it wasn't hard to sell.
It wasn't. It was easy.
No.
Got to get the right client, right idea with the right client. What is the hardest thing about being a purpose-driven agency? Some things that come to mind. Do clients think most of your work's pro bono? Do they pigeonhole you into you can only do this one part of the business or the campaign? What are the most challenging parts about being focused on purpose and make good money? And then what are some of the advantages of it?
Well, the advantages is that's where the world is.
Yeah.
The new consumer, my sons, for example, 26, 28, they buy goods and services from brands that behave responsibly in the world. So, they will not buy Tesla. It's
Of course.
not today, maybe
Yeah.
5 years ago, but so I think we're at the right place at the right time, and that momentum's not going to stop.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot about purpose is dead and DEI is being defunded, and that is just all media hype. People's values don't change because there's a bad guy in the White House.
Right. That's just noise. Yeah.
There's a lot of noise. I did my research. 486 of the corporate 500 still strongly back their DEI projects and initiatives. That isn't changing. You got that guy, what's his name? Robbie Starbuck, who's out there banging a gong about Harley Davidson and John Deere and all these people, all these other brands that he has converted and convinced the boards. Like even Target, like what is Target doing?
I don't know, but it's hurting their business.
They didn't do their homework on that one. So I think their store traffic is down 27%. The purpose, when you're doing creative development, when you worked in a non-purpose driven agency, you're just looking for how does creativity intersect with commerce? So you're looking for an idea that connects with the human insight that really brings the value of the brand forward. And then you could find your target audience and start your campaign there. With purpose, got to bring in the Venn diagram, the third element of consciousness. So it's creativity, commerce, and consciousness. And that consciousness is a little bit more muddy, right?
Yeah, it's squishy. And it depends on what you mean by it.
Exactly. So with ELF, it's all about empowering women. So that's how you get the So Many Dicks campaign. With Strong Roots, it's one of our clients. It's a plant-based frozen product that is convenient. It's frozen. So obviously that's about saving the world, less greenhouse gas effect on the planet. Their tagline is good made easy. So those two examples are very linear.
Yeah.
Michael's is a bit of a challenge, right? Because they sell, art supplies and craft supplies. And how do you make that purposeful?
Right.
So they talked a lot about the joy of creativity. And Lisa and her team got to a campaign called Create the World You Want to Live In, which works on both levels, right? It says you can create your own Halloween costume and your own Christmas tree decorations. But at the same time, if you want to protest what's happening in in the White House in DC right now, you want to create a world where we have personal freedoms and that your friends in the LGBT community need to be protected and your NPR is not going to be revoked. You can create that world because that's the kind of brand that we represent. So it's a little bit more philosophical. The ideology is not as linear as those other two examples I gave you.
It's more nuanced, but it's still there in your work.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to a great client. They understand that. I mean, they have brought together a project about using art therapy to help people that are dealing with depression because coming out of the pandemic.
Oh, I love that.
There's a lot of people who are still kind of, impacted by that loneliness. And also because art programs are being cut from the administration. They're talking about getting more art supplies for, grade schools and grammar schools and stuff like that. So they're doing their small part. Now, we talk a lot about, it's easy to work with a brand like, let's say REI or Patagonia. Like these brands have always been purpose driven from the beginning. It's in their DNA. But if you're going to work with a brand that doesn't know what their purpose is yet, that takes conditioning. And we talk a lot about progress over perfection. So we're never going to work with Smith & Wesson or Philip Morris or anything like that, Dow Chemical. But, we can work with brands that are not as obviously looking out for the planet or the people or the critters. It takes more investigation to give them an angle.
Right. But would you say almost all businesses you can find an angle?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me about the concept of constructive capitalism. What does that mean to you?
It means Not greed over everything else. It means not having the cash register ring and you don't actually contribute to society. It means you can do both. You can do well by doing good. I've heard it called conscious capitalism, constructive capitalism, conscious consumerism, that you can actually run a business, but at the same time look after some kind of social agenda.
What are the challenges about being purpose-driven?
The pressure on CMOs from the CEO about driving profit on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
Where's my return on my investment? Purpose isn't a short game. It's not like you're going to have a sale or you're going to sell a new line of tube socks and it has a new style that's more attractive, and then you have that immediate blip on the radar. Purpose is a slow build. So we try to work with clients that can have performance marketing expectations and also have a purpose campaign running alongside of it. I mean, that's what Elf does. Elf has a handful of agencies that do their marketing. So slow. It's slower than most CEOs have the patience for.
I see. It takes real commitment and strong CMOs to drive the work forward.
Correct.
How has your leadership style changed, would you say, maybe from when you were leading teams at, Kirschenbaum or building that agency to leading them at a purpose-driven agency?
I say it's a lot easier because we are self-defined as an organization.
Uh-huh.
I remember going to the first Advertising Age Small Agency Awards, and they would have these breakout sessions where you can work with a consultant to figure out how to sharpen your purpose profile, so your agency profile, and make yourself more differentiated from the competition. I didn't go to those breakout sessions because
you didn't need to.
It's already baked into who we are. So those are the kind of clients that come to us for that very reason. So we don't have to figure out what our language is. We're already self-defined and already in that space. And also with the people that work for us, we attract that kind of person. So when people are built into purpose, that they really care about social issues, they're far more passionate, far more committed, and far more energized to work harder and to see that change through. So, when I was at a big agency and I would work on, Bloomberg or Microsoft or Nestle, it's transactional. And you're just looking for the next funny thing and trying to get sales to get a blip so you can, get your bonus that quarter or that year. It wasn't a lot of personal investment, and that's not the case at Oberland.
What advice would you give to maybe younger creatives who want to be, in the industry and successful, but also want to lean towards sort of social impact?
To be honest with you, you don't really need a purpose-driven agency to do purpose-driven work.
Yeah.
You just need a purpose-driven brief.
Right.
And that could happen in any agency, in any design firm. But my business partner and Drew, we just wanted to build the business on the back of all purpose brands.
Yeah.
So I think the advice would be to always look for an opportunity to create social impact no matter where you work. But I say this to my sons all the time. The way to break into any business, any creative business, and I don't have to tell you, is hustle.
Yeah. Do more people want to save the world today than when you first started?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when we started, purpose was kind of an unknown quantity, and people would look at me sideways and say, "What's with this purpose? That what, are you saving dolphins?" I was like, "It's purpose. It's social purpose." But I think purpose hit a peak about 4 years ago when Fearless Girl was at Cannes, and there was a lot of hype around that. And now that we have a new administration, it's falling out of fashion, but I think only superficially. I do a bunch of research all the time to make sure these things are data-driven. 87% of new customers between the ages of 18 and 38 expect a brand to take a position of politics, have a point of view, stand for something. So that's not going to change. The new consumer is not going to move their value system because of who's in the White House. That's going to stay consistent.
What's a business challenge that keeps you up at night?
I'm sure you have the same one. I have never reconciled the issue of the subjectivity of our business, the subjectivity versus the profitability, right? So I think it's a good idea. X client says, I don't see it.
Yeah.
And you could do all the focus groups you want, but as a creative person, you're being defensive,
Yeah.
and the client says, well, if you're so creative, go back to the sandbox and find more ideas. So, if we were digging a hole and filling it back in, it's a very tangible thing. And it's going to cost you, the shovel's going to cost this much, the worker's going to cost this much, and the ice tea is going to cost this much. And I'm going to mark it up 20%, and that's a fair price. How do you put a price on ideas? How do you make the ideas that are my opinion actually going to move the needle and have them been proved out? And also, when you have the idea sold in, how do you make sure you're getting paid enough? Like, what are you getting paid by? The hours, by the skin in the game, percentage of sales?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that makes me nuts. And and SAG is dealing with the same thing, and AI is coming in there, and bots are writing scripts, are probably going to be actors soon. So creativity, I think, is not getting its respect and its fair shake of the wallet. It's getting more and more marginalized.
What do you have a mantra or quote that you live by that you always think about?
I'll tell you a story. When I was a kid, I belonged on a swim team, and the coach would say, warm up and do 50 laps. And my father was always like sitting on the side of the pool, and I'd swim 50, and I'd be winded, and he would just say, 5 more. So I always swam 55 laps. And he was trying to, instill in me that hard work pays off.
Yeah.
And you really have to lean in and give extra to really be successful. So I had this thing in my head: give a damn, work hard, repeat.
Give a damn, work hard, repeat. I love it.
That's it. That's my bumper sticker.
It could also be, the bumper sticker could be 5 more.
See,
I like that.
I'm more of a strategist now.
Do you have a role model? Anyone that you try to emulate or you look up to? Or
No, that's how I met Richard Kirschbaum, because Adweek did a story about mentors and mentees. And I think Richard was with Helene Spivak, and there were mentee, mentor, mentee, mentor, mentee. And the guy who called me said, asked me the same question. I don't have a mentor. I never did. So they shot me standing next to an empty stool.
Oh my God, that's so cool though.
Right?
Yeah.
So Richard was photographed before I was, and that's how we met for the first time. I like the old school stuff. I like Earl Kavanaugh from Scally McCabe and Slows, and Ralph Amirati and Carl Alley. Those are the heroes. I mean, for me, Lee Clow and
the icon,
Dan Wyden, those are the people that just blazed the frontier and really just created culture. Don Draper, maybe
Don Draper, of course. My last question is, because we do talk, this is the Soul and Science podcast, and we do talk about brand and performance. And when you think about purpose-driven work as the purpose-driven agency of the year, how do you think about, obviously, the soul of a brand, and you can find that in what the purpose is and what the work is that you're putting out in the world. How do you add the science or the impact of that work? How does that get measured? And I'm sure it's different for every client, but just out of curiosity, does it get measured in eyeballs, awareness, affinity towards the brand?
Thank goodness, we're a purpose-led, creatively driven agency. We are definitely not. No one's going to call us for our performance-driven chops. No one's going to call us for our AI department. It's just it's not who we are. We use a lot of AI, obviously, for research and for art direction and for writing and even production. But when it comes for data, there's lots of online focus group quick check stuff that my strategists use. So all the tools are there; they're readily available. We work with a couple of outside vendors to bolt on to get the analytics. right? So we're not afraid of any of that. I mean, but most of my clients know before we start shooting that, they've proven out the work and that the proof of concept is going to be there through different kind of analytical tools. I couldn't tell you exactly what the products are.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the podcast. You're amazing. I'm personally glad we've become friends over this year, and I've been really wowed by what your agency has done with your recent campaigns.
Jason, you're a star. Thank you.
Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.